Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Friday night on TalkTV. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is Plank of the Week. It's one place where you don't have to worry about judging anybody because we'll do it for you. And I've got a great team with which to do that. I've got Esther Krakue, I've got Geddes, I've got Candice, Holdsworth, and I've got Sam Dowler with a new haircut. Thank you very much indeed. Very good to see you all. Here's what we're fighting for, the Plank of the Week. Coming up very soon, it's going to be Plank of the Year, of course, so we're still accruing points for that. That'll be next week, over Christmas. But let's get things underway. Esther, who's your first nomination?
So my first nomination is my alma mater, Bristol University.
I didn't know you went there.
I did.
How on earth did they produce a sensible, relatively right-leaning individual?
I was a recluse. I didn't go out. Exactly. Anyway, so Bristol University has decided to axe singing the national anthem at graduation ceremonies. I remember my graduation ceremony was so boring. But they've decided to cancel this 147-year tradition because apparently it's not relevant and it could offend some people.
It can be offensive, the national anthem.
Exactly, because God Save the King is, it's terrible.
But we should apologise now, shouldn't we, in case anybody's offended by us mentioning it.
Can we not do a round of it, Mike?
No, we did that before. We had flags that time. We haven't got any flags this time.
Yeah. So they've decided to cancel it because apparently there's some people that would be so offended that they happen to live in Britain. And we do have a monarch as our head of state and we do sing God Save the King.
And they're doing a degree in a British university.
Exactly. It's terrible. But anyway, people are confused why it's always Bristol University that these stories come out of. And I don't think people understand how liberal that city is. I mean, it's to the point of madness, genuinely. And I actually can't believe I came out of there in one piece because these people are ludicrous.
It used to be a place that people went if they couldn't get into Oxford and Cambridge, and Bristol would be the next sort of step down, which was a pretty good place to be if you wanted to do that.
Exactly.
But it seems to have been completely ruined by having sort of communist mayors, ludicrous Labour councils, and just madness.
I think the biggest problem we've got is that universally, all the universities, all of the cultural problems that we're experiencing, societal problems we're experiencing right now, have all originated out of universities. And they are the bedrock to this whole wokeness, to this weird sort of division in terms of...
You know what it is? The inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah, pretty much.
This was actually a student-led initiative.
Isn't it just free thinking, though, really? Yeah. That's what you're encouraged to do.
Yeah, but not children.
Yeah, you can't be so open-minded your brains.
Yeah, but there isn't any free thinking, though, because everybody thinks the same thing.
Exactly.
And if you don't think the same thing, they chase you out of town.
Yeah.
And they're always wrong. They were saying, oh, the national anthem is not relevant to us. What do you mean? You're British.
Yeah, right.
The head of state
Even if you're not British and you're in Britain, you're going to have to listen to it, I'm afraid. It's just the way things are.
Exactly.
You know, if you go to France, you might have to hear the French national anthem every now and again if you don't like it.
Well, you can do the can-can to the French one, so that's a bit more fun.
Excellent. That's something I have to see. So, I mean, I think the biggest concern for me is that we're beginning to... all our traditional values are eroding in this country. They're getting pushed under the carpet.
People are trying to erode...
Well, they're trying their best, and I think, unfortunately, whilst we still tolerate... the precocious and the ostentatious who are turning around and saying, well, we're going to change things now. We won't have the national anthem because it's triggering for someone. Right. That word triggering is triggering to me anyway. But the concern is, I think, take us 10 years from now, if we're on the trajectory that we're currently at, I think we're in deep
I don't think there's any coincidence that part of the reason Britain isn't working is because all the people who are trying to run it have been to university. And they're all absolutely useless at doing anything practical.
But they all went to Eton, though. That's not really...
They didn't all go to Eton, no. Hardly any of them went to Eton.
I didn't go to university. There you go.
But no, but they've been taught all this nonsense about, everybody has to be included and you have to be really nice to everybody. And then, they try and run a country like that and you can't.
But I think it's been shown, like Jonathan Haidt, the social psychologist, has shown that education has steadily become very homogenous over the years. You don't have a range of opinions anymore. Whereas maybe in the 50s and 60s, it would be 50-50, conservative, liberal. Now it's something like 80-90% liberal. And that is a problem.
In the 60s, it was genuinely an act of revolution to go to university and join an anti-Vietnam march and stuff. And that was fine. There was plenty of that going on. But it wasn't compulsory.
But also,
and you had genuine free speech as well. They really did believe in free speech.
Can you imagine being a conservative student now at Bristol University? You'd get run off.
You probably wouldn't be allowed.
You would still be allowed to speak. Inclusivity is vital.
In a lot of places,
vital to our society.
No, but in a lot of places you're not. Look at that woman, the professor who was kicked out of Sussex University because she refused to identify trans ideology as something that she agreed with.
But this is the problem. I mean, I think it's great to have that forum, that arena within universities to explore ideas, to explore cultural changes, to explore inclusivity. But the problem is, I think it's moving to exclusivity. I mean, we're just looking at the Senate hearings over in the US with all the Ivy Leagues at the moment. even the deans are totally confused. I mean, Harvard's main sponsors...
Some of them are now out of a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's have a look. This is Bristol University explaining how they decided to decolonise their science lessons. Check this out.
Within the biomedical sciences schools at the University of Bristol, we've been undertaking a project looking to decolonise and diversify the curriculum. These included bias towards scientists from the global north and white cis men being overrepresented in reading lists and references.
Lack of diversity in images of people or language use that reinforced unhelpful stereotypes, including hero worshipping of white male scientists and patriarchal terms such as founding fathers.
Well, that's because they were the founding fathers.
Exactly.
They were the founding. I mean, also, whoever drew those pictures is the same guy that drew the Joy of Sex book. Isn't it? You know, that guy with a big beard.
Haven't
you? Everybody's read the Joy of Sex. I think you were in it, actually. but I mean, you can't determine who those people are. They've got no faces.
Or no colours. Yeah, exactly.
They're black and white.
That's what you find in the
How
Kama
do you know where they're from? Very weird. Anyway, let's move on. Will, what's your first?
Well, low-hanging fruit, and I think I've probably won it.
Yes, it's a good week for this.
Yeah, it is a great week for it. And actually, before coming on here, there's all sorts of hearings going on at the moment, all about the love. And I know you're a big fan, Mike.
I actually quite like Gary Lineker.
Yes.
I have nothing against the guy at all.
Really?
But I just think that he's making fun now of the BBC, which is a great British institution, and he's taken it too far. I think he wants to get fired. In fact, by the time this show comes out, it may well be that he's gone.
He may very well have. I mean, Gary Lineker, he's a Marmite kind of character. You know, there are a lot of football supporters, a lot of mates of mine. They think he's great. But I think they're hanging on to the legacy of Gary Lineker and the football player and the pundit who I think brought a lot of entertainment and sort of understandably the reason why he's the best paid presenter at the BBC.
He was a kind of cheeky chappy, but there's a lot of younger football fans now who don't remember him at all.
Yeah, but I think
no recollection of what he did when he was playing.
No, other than the crisps. Yeah, I know what those were.
Yeah,
absolutely. We won't mention the brand, but you know the problem with Gary is he's become way too vocal, too involved in social media, far too opinionated. Yeah. And the problem is, that whilst he works for the BBC, that we all fund as taxpayers.
Exactly, we pay his salary, which is considerable.
I don't want to hear it. It's a bit like rock stars. You know, it's a bit like any entertainer. I want to see them entertain. I want them to do what they're professionally qualified to do. Yeah. Exactly.
But you know, people say that if he was saying things that more right-wing people would agree with, we wouldn't have this problem. It's like asking a badger for medical advice. I don't want to hear it, period. I don't want to hear, because as far as I'm concerned, I
don't mind him having a view.
This is the thing, I don't mind him having a view. I just don't want to hear it because he is a BBC presenter and this is an institution that apparently prides itself on impartiality.
I don't want to stop people from having views.
Of course,
that's what we all do. I mean, it's how we make our living. I
But
want
it's
people
the
to have
forum
views.
within which he's using
But he shouldn't be doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
And the way he's been doing it this week, it seems to me that he's trying to either just goad them for the sake of it, or he wants out the contract.
He's pushing the envelope, for sure.
Yeah, he's pushing the boundaries of what he thinks he should be able to do and what he's allowed to do, and I think the BBC will look foolish if they don't do something about it.
And you know, I was listening.
I don't know. Isn't he worth like tens of millions of pounds?
He's got millions and millions
of
pounds.
He doesn't really need the money.
He doesn't really need the money, and I suspect that he's now, because he's got a new podcast company which is making a lot of money, he's even less worried about the BBC. But it kind of suits the purpose of his politics as well, to tell everyone, oh, I got fired by the BBC because they didn't like my politics. Because he's got this unholy alliance with a guy called Alistair Campbell, who you might remember, who sexed up the dossier.
He's the one who started the Iraq War.
Yeah, he's the guy that created spin in the government, right? And he's a very unsavoury character. And he's one of these people.
I'm sure he'll love that description.
Well, he is. I mean, that's the nicest thing I can say about him. You know, I don't mind his being around either, but he's almost like, it's a bit like the relationship Gary Neville has with Andy Burnham in Manchester. Yeah. You know, Gary Neville has never had a brain in his head, but suddenly he's got all these political ideas because Andy Burnham whispers in his ear and repeats it. I mean, the idea that Gary Lineker knew how many jobs Grant Shapps had, how many names he had, is nonsensical. He was fed that. By the king of spin.
Yeah, I would agree with you, but I think also we can't underestimate that Gary Lineker's got a very, very forthright opinion on a number of issues. You know, certainly he's supported Just Stop Oil. He came out,
but he's also got a Mercedes.
He's got a Mercedes
C63.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, one of the fastest cars that's actually been manufactured ever in the history of cars.
Exactly.
Which burns an awful lot of petrol when you put your foot down.
Sure does.
Yeah.
But also the other comments that he was making against Suella Braverman about the same migrancy or anti-migrancy or counter-migrancy initiatives that she had were similar to the Germans. in the 30s.
Yeah. But
Which
it's all
is a direct
Campbell. But these are all
to the
Campbell's
Nazis.
views, right, that he's spouting. That's what I think is unfortunate.
You think he's a glove puppet?
I think very much so.
Yeah.
Do you think people listen to him, though? That's the thing. I mean, he's got a lot of followers.
I think people,
well,
he's got a lot of followers because he's a celebrity. He hasn't got a lot of followers because he's a great political thinker.
Yeah, exactly.
And the people who agree with him, i.e. the Remainers and the FPPE brigade, they all think he's a hero. Because, you know, they're obsessed with all the things that he talks about.
It's
they
tribal.
Hate the Tories.
It's tribal. He's not thoughtful.
But let's face it, Carol Vorderman got fired for exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
I think she got fired for her comically proportioned derriere.
Well, she probably should have been. Let's move on. Candice, what have you got for us?
So it's the Conservative Party who have...
the whole thing.
I mean, that could be the winner.
I'm sorry,
that could be the winner.
I was just like, last week, I was like, I hope I go on plank next week because I know who I'm going to choose. Like, they have not covered themselves in glory.
No.
They have just totally disgraced themselves.
Again.
I mean, where to start? I don't know where to start. I mean, there's all this mess over Rwanda, all their infighting, them taking the voters for granted. But there was one thing this week that I just thought, oh my goodness, really? Apparently, they are now regretting getting rid of Boris Johnson.
Oh, what? I mean, are you serious?
And some are thinking maybe we could bring him back. And I just thought, how...
Don't forget Nigel Farage they want to bring back.
There was that as well.
What a dream ticket,
Well,
Boris and Nigel.
nobody's actually said that the Tories want to bring him back, but lots of people are saying maybe they should bring him back because that may be the only chance they've got of winning.
So that's true, but it's just these people who did it specifically, the way they drummed him out in like this herd-like fashion.
Yeah.
And now, when it didn't work out for them, the risk didn't pay off, in the most ruthless, self-serving way, they're like, oh, well, maybe he should come back.
Yeah.
Not because they have any loyalty to him, but because their jobs are on the line.
I don't think he would go back anyway. I don't think he would.
I would say sending the job offer by WhatsApp would probably be precarious.
Yes.
Though,
well, you know, just in case you think that it would be a good idea to have Boris Johnson back, I heard by chance this week his speech that he made in the final days of his sort of premiership about Peppa Pig. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, you remember that?
And it was I'd kind of forgotten about it, and it was ridiculous. You know,
what was it? Remind
It was just a nonsense.
well, he was.
Peppa Pig World.
The deal was we were supposed to believe that he'd forgotten his notes for his speech, and so he'd just gone off piste and decided to talk about Peppa Pig World. I think you can't even imagine where that would come from, really.
Yeah, it's a bout of collective amnesia to
But you're
think
right.
that Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson come. I only want to see them in bum shorts and heels singing "Spice Up Your Life."
Yeah.
I don't want them anywhere near politics in any serious capacity, especially Boris.
That's an image I'm never going to get out of my head.
Arse is out, hanging from a wire. That's
Exactly.
what we'd like
But
to
you
see
see,
them
politics now has become so ridiculous and such a joke that, you know, it is almost a pantomime act that you need to run the country because they're running it like a pantomime act. You know, they're talking about, I mean, Rishi Sunak this week in Prime Minister's Questions actually was trying to convince himself that he had sorted out all of the 5 things that he said he wanted to sort out. Inflation, he said, was down. He said that they were sorting out the NHS. They'd reduced the number of small boats by a third. They'd got growth back up and they'd reduced debt. I'm going, sorry, you know, nobody in this country is going, oh yeah, you've done really well there. Brilliant.
No. I do think the saga though with this, you know, Rwanda safety bill this week was a bit cruel, right? Because we had all these factions that are going to vote against it. Not a single Tory voted against it. So, and because they realised that to put this country through more Tory infighting is just cruel and disrespectful.
But we're going to have more in January though. They've just put it off.
Oh, it's going to get worse.
And it's all for nothing because Rwanda's never going to happen anyway.
And it's a gimmick, like Keir Starmer says. It's not. It's to stop. It's a deterrent to stop people from coming on the boats when it will never do that. Nobody's not going to stop going
if they actually
on a boat
made it
and think,
work.
oh, no, I'm going to go to Rwanda, so I won't get in this boat.
I think if they did make it work, it would be a deterrent, but they won't make it work. So
the thing is, if you're going to do this, you need to follow the Australian playbook play by play. Right? You need to do, I mean, I would literally hire the politicians, the Australian politicians responsible for their policy to Papua New Guinea, and I'd be like, I'll pay you consultancy to make this work verbatim. Because if not, then there's really no point.
I mean, the thing with the Australian system, though, is that they were coming from a lot further away. So it was easy to stop them coming. This lot are literally coming
over the channel. I don't know why we can't turn them around.
Surprisingly, I did a project not so long ago in the north of France, and firstly, not one of the migrants that we saw, there were any women, there were any children. They were all of fighting age. The second thing is the stretch of water from Calais and from Dunkirk and that area which they're obviously launching from. To be honest, the boats are so poor, they're so weak that are being given by the smugglers. They're counting on them literally to be picked up by the UK or by the French.
Some of them are pretty big, though, aren't they?
They are big, but I mean, we found some life jackets which literally had cardboard inside them. There was no life support on it. So these people are jumping on there, but the only way to intercept it And obviously, international waters only start 12 miles offshore, and 12 miles, obviously, offshore from the UK. So you've got a very, very small pocket of international waters. That's what really needs to be done. They need to literally deluge it with craft to basically intercept, return them back to France, continue to do that. And that's the only way we're going to do it.
I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities, and we've talked about them endlessly, but the point is everybody's sick of it now.
Yeah,
Everybody just wants to go and bury themselves under a very large mound of earth.
Yeah.
And tell me when I can come back out again when somebody sensible is running the bleeding country.
Especially because we don't buy the idea that these are genuine refugees anyway.
Well, that's the thing. Sam, let's go to yours.
My first nomination is Abdul Wah.
Yes. The doctor.
Yes, the jihadi GP.
Yeah, Dr. Jihadi.
Apparently. So I certainly don't agree with Suella Braverman when I say, pro-Palestine marches. I hate marches. I think everybody should have the ability to march and protest should they want to have friends.
Yeah.
I have friends that have been to both, but however, supporting Hamas is not the same thing as supporting Palestine.
Correct.
And also, so in this interview he did with Piers Morgan on this very channel, he talks about how he would like there to be Sharia law in this country, and obviously, as a gay person, that would render my life not worth him saving. As a GP, he said that gay people were sinners.
Well, I presume he wouldn't treat gay people, would he?
He said that he would, but he has no business being a GP if these are the ideals that he holds.
Well, certainly not in this country. I mean, if he wants to be a GP behave like that, you go to Palestine, where they do that, actually. But let's have a look. He was on Piers Morgan, as you say, this week. This is Dr. Abdul Wah.
Why don't you go to surgery tomorrow and say, before we go any further to your patients, I want you to know what I think. I think that I agree with the guy who said this country is full of LGBT filth, feminist filth. I don't think Hamas are a terror group. I don't think what they did on October the 7th was a terror attack. And by the way, do you want me now to treat you?
Do you understand what...
I don't understand any of that.
...professional integrity is?
Yeah, let's all clap for the NHS. Great job. I mean, there's loads of these people in the NHS. There's an awful lot of doctors who agree with what he said, because the following night after he was on with Piers, there was another doctor on who happened to be Palestinian who basically said the same thing. And it's kind of like, you don't understand, Piers. This didn't all start on October the 7th, and on and on and on, and all that ridiculousness that we hear all the time.
Yeah, but also
perfectly valid argument.
But also he says,
work in the NHS, surely.
Also he says that it's against teachings in the Quran to kill women and children. He said that Hamas didn't do that, except obviously there's footage and Hamas themselves videoed themselves doing it. None of us are still any wise about what Hamas was thinking with this whole poking the bear to begin with. If they wanted to make Israel look bad in the eyes of the world, then maybe they've succeeded in some way.
Yeah.
However,
we all know what they wanted to do was to blow up the accords that were being made between Israel and several other countries in the Middle East.
Correct.
That's what they were doing. Yeah. But the fact is that he more or less denied believing.
Exactly. What was in front of his eyes? He was saying wasn't true.
I think one of the things we've talked about since the October 7th attacks is how anti-Semitism has risen in this country. And my point has been, there hasn't risen. They're just people that feel emboldened enough to stand in the streets of this country's capital to spout hateful things. The bigger issue should be, wow, we've let in people into this country, our neighbours, that we don't know what views they hold, many of them who hate us. What do we do about them? What do we do about people whose values are incompatible with British values?
Give them a job in the NHS.
That always helps.
Yeah, but I think the most concerning thing is we actually now are beginning to see, quite realistically, that the enemy is now within.
Yeah.
And that is, there are people in my world, in my particular sector, we're really quite concerned about this. So and I think we've all experienced this in social environments where people are incredibly divided. How many people do we honestly know that are massively impartial about the whole Palestine-Israel situation? Yeah. You either fall on one side or you fall on the other. Now, there is no excuse in my book for any group that is protesting pro-Palestine to not condemn Hamas and their actions.
But there's
and
a lot of
none of them are actually doing that.
That is a big problem. And Piers Morgan is highlighting that very well, I think.
Very well,
a lot of people on his show. And some people say, oh, you shouldn't have these people on. I disagree. I think get them on. Let's see what they think. And let's have them out there in the open.
Show them out.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pretty racy start to the Plank of the Week this week. We've got lots of good ones coming as well. Coming up, we're going to be talking about security in this country. Those guys that wander around outside shops. And of course, that guy, Montecito. Remember him? This is TalkTV. Plank of the Week. More next. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night, and of course, we are here all the way through until 8 o'clock. And then you're going to have something even more exciting to look at. But we've got to get Prince Harry out of the way coming up very shortly. Before that, it's my turn. And I'm going to say it's been a pretty bad week to be a security guard in the country this week, because we've had a couple of incidents which I'm going to show you on video. The first one of which is quite remarkable. I don't know how many of you have been to St Pancras Station, but when you go to St Pancras Station and various other places, there's a piano. And Rod Stewart did a number there with Jules Holland. Alicia Keys did a number as well. Yeah. And they presumably got away with it, no problem at all. But this guy, who you're about to see, didn't get away with it. He's a boogie-woogie sort of YouTuber. Right. And his name is something like Mr. M. Brendan Kavanagh is his real name. But let's have a look at what he actually did.
I'm surrounded by security. Carry on, carry on. I think I'm in trouble. Carry on! Carry on! I think I'm in trouble. I'm saying to you, you continue. You continue. I just said to you, do you not allow to touch it in the police? Let come on, let Tony. Oh, you're from the police as well? No, we're in the different. You got an audience. Hello. I haven't even got. Hello. You don't say. Don't touch this one, please.
So I think in the end, 5 security guards, 2 police officers from the British Transport Police, who basically were trying to tell him he couldn't play the piano. Why? They more or less said in the end, finally, because he's going, what are you talking about? You can't play. It's a public piano. I've only been to St Pancras once in a while, but whenever I'm there's somebody playing the piano. Quite often it's just a passenger.
So you don't have to book. You don't have to book a slot or anything.
No. You don't have to. No, the whole point of it is that it's an impromptu thing, which is meant to be kind of fun for people to do. And I've seen kids playing them. I've seen. You know, there's footage all over the place if you go on YouTube of people just walking past and thinking, oh, I'll go and play chopsticks. You know, anything you like.
Beauty of it.
But this guy was basically told he couldn't play. They tried to tell him he'd been playing for too long. They tried to tell him he was playing around the wrong way at one point. They had to turn the piano round. And then they said he had an audience which was causing a problem. And eventually, actually, the British Transport Police kind of said, it's probably going to be okay, but it took 7 people. Wow. And he's going, what is wrong with you? Why on earth are you... And the guys were trying to touch him, they were trying to shut the lid of the piano down on his fingers. I mean, just bizarre.
It's like petty authoritarianism.
For me, this is this kind of the COVID effect, you know, that people, some of these guys, they put on an orange vest and they think they're marshals of some kind. They want to sort of stop you doing anything, you know, like, don't kiss that person there, you can't do that. You know, don't eat that chocolate over there. You know, don't take that drink outside. You have
it's power, isn't it? Just a whiff of power.
Being in the industry, I would imagine that those guards have probably been pulled up on this. The security officers have been pulled up on this.
Unfortunately for them, it went viral on YouTube, so a lot of people have seen it. But there was one worse thing that happened, and you might remember this one. This was the McDonald's scenario earlier this week, where a homeless man was outside a McDonald's in, I think it was Victoria, central London. Right. And they were cleaning up outside. Have a look at this.
What are you doing? They give them powers. So what? You're covering his sleeping bag. That's wrong, and you know that. What are you doing? Oh, no, they're sleeping here. I don't about that. That is out of order. Bang out of order.
They told me this guy wasn't even actually technically outside.
That would be Westminster Council that would have had to enforce that.
Well, that's really cruel.
I don't know if it was somebody. I think it was somebody inside McDonald's who came out.
Really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure because McDonald's fired them.
Yeah.
So they couldn't have fired them.
Yeah, no.
So these are private security guards. They were cleaning up after presumably the end of a long shift, and they saw this homeless guy, and they basically soaked his sleeping bag with water.
Not the worst I've seen. Exactly, I've seen that.
Yeah. And so they've been fired. McDonald's had to apologise. McDonald's said, we've been using this outside firm, and we're never going to use them again. The third-party security guards involved have been permanently removed from our restaurants, and the restaurant team has been reminded of the importance of treating all people with respect, including vulnerable people, both in the restaurant and within the wider community.
Yeah, quite right.
It's heartwarming though to hear people shouting and saying, exactly. And that is like, you know, obviously people walk past homeless people all the time without even acknowledgement. So this,
but it's what you say is true. It's all about power. There's this one place I know with the security guard, and he's seen me about 100 times. But every time I go in, he's got to ask me questions.
Yes.
Because he's just like, this is my job, and I've got to do this. And he makes out like he doesn't recognise me each time. And I'm like, you're doing this because you're just milking that little bit of power that you have.
He might be into you, though, babe.
Yeah, it might be that. I mean, there are two sides. I mean, the security guards will have their assignment instructions, so they're given duties that they have to fulfil.
Yeah, but you know as well as I do, Will, there are people, and you're at the high end of it. I mean, down at the lower end of it, where these guys are, some people enjoy it more than others.
Yeah, but I'm also employed to review the guys who are operating at that level.
But you'll be able to spot people who are having a bit too much fun.
I mean, hey, I get it, Mike. I get it. I mean, I've walked into offices and they've treated me in a very sort of weird authoritarian way.
Yeah.
And obviously I tell them I'm a friend of Esther's. And
that usually gets you away.
Very smooth.
Makes them real quiet.
Yeah, you get arrested.
I have that effect.
Well, speaking of Esther, now over to you.
Harry!
Now, I see already we've got 4 winners already. The Conservative Party, you know, the doctor from Hamas.
I'm sorry, Harry is this must win because he's had such a terrible week.
He's not had a good week.
Exactly. So did you see what the Hollywood Insider called him and his blushing bride Meghan? The biggest losers in Hollywood, apparently. And
the Hollywood Reporter, which is like the Bible of the business in Hollywood. Literally.
So he's not had a great week. And if you look at the figures coming out of his charity, apparently donations have dropped by $9 million. And it was roughly around $10 million. In revenue, so it's quite a significant amount. But the reason why he's my plank this week, and there's several reasons, is because he's been ordered to pay Associated Newspapers £48,000 for his libel case, because he tried to get their defense thrown out about an article that they wrote in February 2022 saying that he tried to put a positive spin on his battle with the Home Office for having his armed security removed. And he said that it apparently went against his integrity and that it made him look like a liar and that he was trying to mislead the public. Well, the judge found that actually the Associated Newspapers can go ahead with that defense because there's plausible reason for it.
Absolutely.
Because he actually only offered to pay for his security after this went to court, and he clearly wasn't entirely forthcoming about the nature of this case. I suspect he's going to settle, because even though £48,000 is loose change to him, I think this is just so embarrassing.
Well, the thing is that he's got so many cases going on. I remember when he was here last, he had 6 going on in one day in the same High Court, right? And he doesn't seem to understand the law very well. I think he's got some very expensive lawyers who are very good at convincing him that he should take cases on, because they're getting paid about 500 quid a minute. And they're going, we've got a very good chance of winning this, Your Royal Highness.
And Harry and Meghan have both been found to be untruthful.
Bend the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Bend the truth.
And you can't do that when you're on the stand.
No, exactly. And you can say like, "Oh, I'm gonna take them to court, etc., etc., etc." But like, you have to have a case.
Right.
But you always got to remember that the only people who win in litigation are the lawyers.
Yes. And do you remember when he was up and talking about the various phone hacking charges he was making, and the lawyers who were defending the newspaper organisations were saying, "Well, why do you think? And have you got any evidence of this information being obtained by phone hacking?" "Oh, I haven't got any." I don't know. I just think it was.
Some of the information was
well, here's a press
palace.
release from the Press Association that came from Buckingham Palace about the story that appeared in the paper. Oh, well, maybe they just got it that way then. And it was kind of like pathetic.
From what I understand with the whole sort of the royalty protection thing, fundamentally he was going to be provided with. He can pay for his own private security. And private security,
most celebrities do.
Which they do indeed, and I should know. So I mean, but in terms of obviously what they do, they can provide pretty much everything, other than they can't be armed in the United Kingdom. However, when he would be visiting members of the royal family, he would fall under the grasp of, or under the umbrella of RASP, as they're known, Royalty and Special Protection.
Well, he knows he wouldn't be visiting them because they wouldn't speak to him. But
well, that's the thing. So it's him and Meghan on their own.
He needs to be protected from his brother, I think.
Exactly,
pushing him into a dog bowl.
Exactly.
This is the man who fought in Afghanistan for his country.
Yeah, I know.
He hopes back on a dog bowl, though.
By the way, I've got some more breaking news for you on Harry, because there's even more bad news.
Howie?
The Duke of Beaufort, who I don't really know who that is, but he's one of the sort of aristos that hangs about with Harry. He's written a book, and he's been talking about the book and some of the anecdotes in it. And when apparently Harry was 18, he literally apparently had to pull him off various women that he was trying to throw into a swimming pool at a party that he'd been invited to, and he had to be told in no uncertain terms that that's not really the way you're supposed to behave if you're one of the heirs to the throne. So he used to be fun, is all I'm saying.
Exactly.
And now he's so boring. He's so boring. He used to hang around with strippers naked playing pool in Las Vegas.
Exactly. And he was loved. He was loved.
And all the stuff in the past is somebody else's fault as well. Let's not forget about that.
And he loved a fancy dress party, didn't he?
He did. He did like all that.
That was William and Catherine's fault, though.
And that wasn't. Yeah.
I think that has something to do with the fact that his wife
stitched him up, according to him.
Yeah,
wear that Nazi uniform.
I'll go down a tree.
Anyway, listen, over to you, Will. What's the next one?
Oh, so
going international.
Oh, yes, I'm taking this to broader territories. So Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un, not Kim Jong Drakeford.
No, not Drakeford. Exactly.
He's escaped the list so far.
He has so far. Yeah. But our lovely 38-year-old master and ruler of North Korea has been having a little bit of a hard time recently. Yeah. One of the biggest problems that Korea is now facing is some of this draconian law that's been imposed, which has included within it a lot of poverty, a lot of famine. Right. They've lost approximately about 1 million of its population, basically, who have died. Right. And he's now gone out appealing, basically, to all the Korean women. Not that appealing to them really makes any difference, because he'll probably just order them to do it or die otherwise, to have more children. Okay. Because their population is depleting significantly. That obviously the analysts have turned around and said, unless you start procreating and creating more citizens for North Korea,
but they haven't got enough food for the people they've got.
They haven't.
Oh my God!
They don't want to procreate.
Which is particularly concerning when he's just taken delivery of a £200,000 armoured Mercedes, because obviously he needs that in his fleet of vehicles.
He likes to fly the old lobsters in as well, doesn't he?
Oh, he does.
I'm not sure.
He's huge.
Yeah.
People are starving in North Korea.
And
that tells you everything.
I'm no expert, but I have been told that the kind of activity that creates babies is so taxing and you require quite a lot of energy that you probably shouldn't have a malnourished population to do it. That's what I've been told.
Hang on, it's taxing.
I don't know, maybe you could tell me. Gentlemen,
I'll explain to you later.
You can explain it to me.
It can be quite quick sometimes. Quite quick and easy.
It requires energy.
It's not the first thing you think of when you're starving, that's true. Let's have a look at Kim, because he's very emotional in this particular
he's been crying,
clip that we've got. Yeah, he's crying. I'm not sure if those are his actual sounds.
He didn't have his morning lobster.
No. But he's clearly...
I still love his Lego haircut.
I did see a piece of footage actually earlier this week of a load of people sitting in an audience, because he has an audience for something like this, where it's just rows and rows and rows.
They're there to pay homage to his greatness.
Menopausal women.
They were quite young women, and they all seemed to be wearing the same kind of pink outfit.
Oh, yeah.
Wait,
he has quite a concubine. Quite a concubine
Right.
of young ladies.
Are you referring to the conference he was at, the Mothers...
The Mothers Conference?
Yeah, that's what he was doing, and they were all menopausal women, and I was like, they haven't been mothers for quite a while, so...
They won't be having any kids anytime soon.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going anywhere near that one. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we've got an ex-footballer. We've got a really, really boring bloke to come as well, but much more coming up on Plank of the Week. This is TalkTV. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're more than halfway through now. We haven't got very far to go, but we've got some great ones still to come. Let's go to Candice Holdsworth for her second nomination. Candice, who you got?
So, Will mentioned it briefly. It's SNL, and it's the skit they did about the congressional hearings in the US about anti-Semitism.
Saturday Night Live in America, yeah.
Exactly. And all these heads of the universities just, completely blew it. People were shocked. Across the political spectrum, everyone said these women, or these heads of these universities, lacked moral clarity. Yeah. But for some reason, SNL seemed to take a completely different interpretation, and they were mocking the congresswoman who had exposed their moral failings.
It's as if she was in the wrong somehow.
Yes.
I think we've got the clip.
I saw it was their cold open, which they have every show, and it's always political. It's always political satire, and when I find it quite funny because I'm a big fan of SNL, but I think you should mock. You could mock anything in the current state of the government in America anyway. So I think, I kind of agree with you, but I think everything has to be open to satire. I think.
But as usual, really it's the usual lefty satire. It can only be pointed in one direction. Because you couldn't go on and make fun of Muhammad, for example, could you? On Saturday Night Live, they wouldn't do it.
No.
Thank you. Let's have a look at the clip.
Some of my closest friends are also Roman Catholic. So, you Penn lady, would you say that you are anti-Semitic?
I'm sorry, can you tell me how many antis that was?
I will not.
And no doubt there will be people, Sam, as you say, who think that the people who got fired for being incredibly anti-Semitic by saying that killing the Jews was not necessarily against the rules of the college because it might be in context.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and people are going, we agree with that. You know, and so those are the people that think it's funny. It's a bit like the MASH report. You know, the MASH report used to continually lambast Boris Johnson. Yeah. And one of the reasons I'm pretty sure they shut it down was that when he ceased to be Prime Minister, they didn't have any jokes anymore. Because they couldn't tell jokes about
but I have to say, watching that small clip is not enough for me to go and search it out now, because I didn't raise even a smile.
No. That's the tragedy of a lot of
in the US, they're kind of hoisted by their own petard with the First Amendment, like, you know, the freedom of speech, of course, because obviously then even when you say something that's, you know, pro-Nazi or like pro-Hamas, that's still freedom of speech. So therefore, you know, by rights you're allowed to say it.
Unless it's an incitement to
violence. Kill the Jews is pretty up there.
Genocide is fine.
But a lot of people misunderstand freedom of speech. Freedom of speech doesn't mean you can't say it. It just means that if you say it, there may be consequences for what you say. And in this case, these idiots getting fired. Which is as it should, because what's also happened in America, and I was just there, is that an awful lot of the big Ivy League universities like Columbia, Yale, Harvard, they've all had millions and millions of dollars pulled by investment.
Huge amounts.
Because they've said, look, you can't employ these people, you can't go around saying that. There's your freedom of speech. Now you've got no money.
But they haven't really respected freedom of speech for years, though. I mean, you think about the number of speakers who've been deplatformed. In any other context, I mean, you think about microaggressions, they talk about the mental safety of the students.
Safe space.
All of that. So, I mean, for them now to sort of hide behind the First Amendment, I mean, people just didn't really buy it. Plus, there's a difference between
hypocrisy on the left wing? Surely not.
But also, there's a difference between having legal protection to say something, and you won't go to jail, for instance, and a code of conduct on a university campus, and the way that you should be behaving.
I think this is a general societal thing. I keep coming back to this. It's like people on social media who think that they can say whatever they like without the threat of getting punched in the face, which they would do if they did it in the street against their particular subject. So the fact of the matter is there's sort of this hide behind the First Amendment, this hide behind the ability and freedom to demonstrate in this country doesn't go without consequences. And the problem is many of these people think they can get away with it.
Yeah, but they don't. They fundamentally misunderstand the whole point of freedom of speech. You know, it's like when you criticise Gary Lineker on social media, people go, "Oh, I thought you liked freedom of speech. I thought you didn't like cancel culture." And you go, "Yeah, well, I don't want him to stop saying it. I just don't think he should say it while he's at the BBC."
The right forum.
Because of his job.
That's it. You know, and that's it's a very straightforward, black and white situation, it seems to me. Anyway, not very funny, so a very good plank, I think. Now, Sam, down to you for a bit of football. Over to the sports department.
Well, talking of people who should keep their mouths shut, Joey Barton, who has once again made a fool of himself, and by saying that women, even if they are an elite player, should not commentate.
Oh no, he's right.
Should
You're
not
wrong.
commentate on men's football.
Nope,
and saying that, you know, forgetting seemingly the fact that most pundits didn't used to play elite football anyway, and just because you're a good player doesn't mean you're a good presenter either. And he basically, in the interview again with Piers Morgan, do I watch anybody else? Yes, I do.
Piers Morgan is now becoming the real fodder for Plank of the Week. Again on Piers Morgan, it's pretty good chance to get on Plank of the Week.
He had so many planks on, that's why. And he talks himself around in circles, and then they brought on 3 female pundits who were just like, how dare you?
Well, I don't know if that's the clip we're going to see.
He was saying that it was ruining football for him.
It is ruining football. It is. I'm sorry, that is wrong.
Hang on. All right, hang on. Hold your horses. Let's have a look at the clip and then we can decide.
We have to be very, very careful. Look at what it's doing to other sports, and you know, I don't want to see the sport that I love ruined. And my experience as a man, it's ruining. I can't watch the telly now for, and a lot of the information is technically incorrect that these so-called experts. Women experts are saying about the men's game.
He's right.
To be fair to
my experience
Barton,
as a man.
To be fair to Joey Barton, though, I mean, his argument was quite nuanced, and the criticism of his argument was completely wrong, because people thought he was saying there shouldn't be women pundits. That wasn't what he was saying. What he was saying was, if you're going to have somebody as an expert pundit, i.e. somewhere who would be a footballer, they have got to have played that sort of football. Now, you don't get journalists doing that job. You get other footballers doing it. So
and the thing is, there's a
difference
between presenters and pundits.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I always draw parallels with gymnastics. I watch female gymnastics religiously. I don't hear men commenting on female gymnastics experience because you haven't been there. You don't understand the physicality of a woman. You don't understand how different your hormones change your training times. It's completely different. Even women's football, it's different to men's football. The pitches are the same size as men's football, so they look like children.
But it's still the same game though, with the same rules.
It's not the same.
Yeah, but that's not an argument.
If I kicked a ball into your chest, it'll be hitting your chest. If you kicked a ball into my chest, it'll be hitting breasts. It's a completely different sport. I'm sorry.
But that doesn't mean that people can't have comments on them though.
No, women shouldn't be commenting on.
No, but his point is that if you're going to be an expert commentator,
you got to know your stuff.
You need to have done what they're doing.
What he says,
I think he's right about that.
What he says is he brings up the woke agenda, which is why he
thinks
woke
agenda?
It's not woke agenda to have female pundits. Women watch football as well, you know. They're no better or worse.
You've got to remember there's a difference between pundits and experts. That's the point he's making.
Or presenters.
And when, funnily enough, those 3 women presenters were put in front of him, all they did was scream at him. And he just sat there and went, well, you've got to prove my point. And it was this kind of banshee-like attack on him. And all he's basically saying is that if you are a footballer who has played at a high level, you will be more of an expert talking about men's high-level football than if you're not. And that could include a woman, a professional footballer who hasn't played to that level, or it could include another man.
The thing is, I think
in the same way that he wouldn't want me doing it.
The reason why the women
but I've done
so
shows
angry.
on Talk Sport because I know enough about football to do it, but I don't know what it's like to be tackled, by Gary Neville.
Well, this is the thing. The reason why the women were so angry is because if you tell them to go and commentate on women's football, they'd be paid a lot less because no one watches women's football because it's rubbish, right? At the end of the day, it's not asking for much to say you play a completely different sport from the men. You don't have the experience. Therefore, any comment you make will be based on nothing.
Yes, but none of the commentators have played elite football either.
Though.
But they're still commentators, and they've had throughout my childhood, none of the pumps.
Sam, I've told you 3 times there's a difference between an expert and a commentator. So that's what he's getting at. But I have to say, one of his motivations, I think, is that he's not getting any work. So, and he's actually, because if you look at some of his social media, which goes out a little bit later on at night, shall we say, when he may or may not have partaken, he gets a bit more vitriolic about stuff. And he's like, I'm being prevented from working. So I think it's a bit of that going on as well.
People only do that when they've had a few late at night.
Oh,
I cannot go on Twitter and argue with people if I've had a few because it's just like,
I'll never do it after 11 o'clock anyway because you know you're in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, coming up, I'm going to do my final one, who I don't think has actually been on Piers Morgan's show yet, but nevertheless, he's going to get a plank nomination.
I do now.
This is one of the best shows I think we've ever done in terms of the numbers of planks that could win it. Almost everyone could win it at this point, so it could be difficult for me to choose. We might have to have another vote. This is Plank of the Week. Coming after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We have reached the very final part of the show, and we've only got 1 more out of the 10 to nominate, and then we'll have to decide exactly who should win. I mean, but the Conservative Party, Jerry Barton, Prince Harry, Gary Lineker. I mean, could be a joint winner this week. Anyway, Chris Packer is mine.
Chris Packer now.
It's a bit of a voice of the past. Well, he's gone a bit mad, as Chris, hasn't he? I mean, lately he keeps making these kind of slight odd prognostications. And he's been sacked by one of the charities that he represents because he's become too political. And the bird charity is called Raptor Rescue. And they've just cut ties with him because they didn't like the fact that he was saying that he's now decided that breaking the law is a completely relevant and understandable thing to do because we're in a climate emergency. He's gone full eco-nutter. He's decided that the world is going to end literally in about 2 weeks if you don't stop doing the horrible things you do, like driving, flying,
eating,
so
complete environmental umbrella.
He's gone
going on I'm a Celeb as well.
Yeah, he's gone completely nutty, right?
Okay.
So basically, Raptor Rescue said that he was not doing any work for the charity and was dividing their membership with all of his campaigns because all they want to do is just rescue birds.
Raptors.
Not raptors, no.
Okay.
I think they're called Raptor Rescue for not a reason. There are no raptors, okay?
I was going to say,
Raptors are seen as the forefathers of birds.
He's been voicing his support for, just wait for it, Just Stop Oil, Animal Rising and Extinction Rebellion. And he also said that protesters should consider blowing up an oil refinery.
Nice.
As you do.
That's too far.
I mean,
guys are still with me.
We come back to freedom of speech. Steady on, Chris. Don't encourage people to start blowing
We're
stuff up.
going Rainbow Warrior, aren't we?
I mean, it's really not good. He does, however, strangely enough, he does remain the chairman of the RSPCA.
Has he?
Okay.
They still haven't kicked him out.
Okay.
And the RSPB, I think, as well. But basically, he hadn't done anything for the charity. He was a patron, but we hadn't heard from him for a while, and then we couldn't contact him.
Might be that
so we
reason.
basically
Why
shoved him off.
Why has he gone mad? What is he been smoking grass?
I don't know what's happened to him, because he used to be quite a sensible kind of...
He was a nice guy.
Decent sort of, wildlife...
Bit of a housewife.
Well, I agree with what he said about I'm a Celebrity and about how, using animals for entertainment. It's, I know, but bugs and, it is outdated, really, to use bugs and rats and snakes and stuff for entertainment. It is
absolutely not.
It is outdated,
I like it.
but he's correct about the climate emergency. But however,
no, he's not.
He is correct about that.
What do you think there's a climate emergency?
It absolutely is an emergency.
Oh,
God.
Yeah. How do you get on this show? When do you think the world's actually going to end?
If you didn't enjoy,
not for thousands of years.
If you didn't enjoy
really an emergency,
Matt Hancock eating kangaroo testicles, I can't help you.
Yeah,
I can't help
fair
you.
enough.
Yeah.
The world is not ending, by the way.
Yeah, but
well, no, apparently in thousands of years.
Oh, okay.
Therefore, it's not an emergency.
We do need to calm down on the fossil fuels, and everybody knows
I won't be around. I don't want to care.
You're not coming to my bonfire.
Yeah. Dowler's never coming back on this show. He's talked his way off. Right. Now, do we have to decide? Have we run out of time? We have got to decide now. We may have to do this by show of hands.
Obviously,
Well, Gary Lineker looks like he should really be.
I think so.
I mean, it is sort of his week.
Prince Harry had 3 L's this week. 3.
Sorry, the Tory.
Harry has had.
He had 3.
No, there's worse to come from them. There's worse to come.
There's no point making them right now.
I think it's got to be.
The next one will be the divorce, won't it?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so keep talking amongst yourselves. I'm going to give it to Gary Lineker, the king of late night football. Match of the day. How much longer can he last? Probably not another season. I think it's all over.
Yeah.
They think it's all over.
And it
is now. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Candice. Thank you, Sam. We might give you another chance. Keep your mouth shut. We will see you same time next week. Plank of the Year coming up as well. Don't forget the World According to Mike Graham at 11:30. But coming up next, it's the Dean Dorries right here on Friday night.